I'm Ms. Henderson. I'm an 8th grade ELA teacher at Ferndale Middle School, but I'm really excited to be working with you today. For this lesson, you need your ELA notebook, a pencil or a pen, something to write with, and your figurative language list if your teacher has provided it for you. So for our lesson today, we're going to be interpreting figurative language in the poem Can't by Edgar Albert Guest. And this is a poem that we've read before, we got the gist of it, we understand what it's about, but this time we're going to be focusing on the language used within the poem. So authors use their words very carefully. They can use them to create a vivid picture for the reader, to make the reader feel a certain emotion, which we call the mood, or they're trying to convey how they feel about a topic in the poem, which is the tone. And authors will use figurative language to do this. Figurative language is descriptive language or descriptive words and phrases that are not literal. So let's look at a statement that's using only literal language. Xavier ran quickly down the hall. That's telling you what Xavier did, but it's not really helping you create an image or a picture. It's just telling us that he ran down the hall and he ran down quickly. If I look at this example, Xavier sprinted down the hall like a cheetah, it helps me picture how quickly he's running. And the author does that by comparing him and the speed with which he was running to a cheetah. So this example is a lot more descriptive and really helps you picture what's going on in the story, where this one just tells you. It's kind of boring. So authors use figurative language to convey emotion or to spice up their writing. So here are a couple different types of figurative language that really should be familiar to you. A simile, a metaphor, personification, an idiom, an allusion, and hyperbole. Again, these should all be really familiar to you, and you may already have this list in front of you. But if you need to refresh your brain or refresh your mind about what these are and examples, go ahead, pause the video, and look over this chart. Before we hop into the poem Can't, I'm going to ask you to think about a time when you were dealing with a difficult or overwhelming or challenging situation. How did you motivate yourself when you encountered that challenge? So for example, online learning has been a challenge for all of us. For me, as a teacher, I've really tried to take that as an opportunity to learn more about different types of technology that I can use to support my students, and also be able to take that back into the classroom when we do return in person. So instead of giving up and being frustrated with online learning, I took it as a challenge and flipped it around and looked at it as a new opportunity to learn something new. So what do you do when you're in a difficult situation? How do you deal with that? How do you motivate yourself? Take a second and jot that down before we hop into our poem. So Edgar Albert Guest actually gives us some advice on some things we can do when we encounter a challenging situation or a doubt. So we're going to read this poem, and again, we've read this before. And when we last read this poem, we did come to the conclusion that the word can't really was having to do with this idea of doubt. So anytime that we're reading this story, we can think or ask ourselves, how does the author feel about the word can't or the idea of doubt? How does the author describe it? And based on the way the author describes it, how does he feel about it? And how should we deal with it? So while I'm reading, make sure you're following along. Can't by Edgar Albert Guest. Can't is the word that is foe to ambition, an enemy ambush to shatter your will. Its prey is forever the man with a mission, and bows but to courage and patience and skill. Hate it with hatred that's deep and undying. For once it is welcome, 'twill break any man. Whatever the goal you are seeking, keep trying and answer this demon by saying, I can. So our author uses a lot of figurative language in this poem to help us really understand how he feels about doubt and how he thinks we should deal with it. So let's go look at some of that figurative language. We're going to use these steps to help us interpret the meaning of figurative language in this poem. First, we're going to identify the figurative language, which means we're going to state what type of figurative language it is, and we may even talk about what is being described or what is being compared. Then we'll interpret the figurative language. What does it mean? What does it help us understand about the idea of doubt? So I'm going to walk you through these steps and make sure you follow along, because after I'm done, you're going to do the same thing on your own. So this third line in this poem really stuck out to me. Its prey is forever the man with a mission. So first, I'm going to go ahead and identify some of this figurative language in this line. First, the author says its prey is forever the man with a mission. So when the author talks about this word he's referring to doubt. And doubt is given a living quality or characteristic, and this is personification. The author is personifying or making doubt, or the word can't, a living thing. This whole line is also a piece of figurative language. So now that we've identified our figurative language, we're going to go ahead and interpret it. So if the author is saying that doubt is a predator, I have to think, what do I think about when I think of a predator and prey? I think of animals. I think of a tiger stalking its prey and constantly following it. And this helps us understand that self-doubt never goes away. And I also have to think about that other piece of the relationship between predator and prey, where the predator's ultimate goal is to hunt and kill the prey. And it helps us understand that not only does self-doubt never go away, but if you let it in, it will squash or kill any desire you have to accomplish a goal. Remember, authors choose their words very, very carefully. Our author chose to compare doubt to a predator and a man on a mission to prey. So we're going to ask ourselves, and we're going to think through, what picture is created through the use of these words? What emotions do we feel when we read this line? And how does Edgar Albert Guest feel about doubt based on the figurative language and the word choice that he used? As I said earlier, when I read this line, I can almost picture a tiger or an animal stalking its prey and getting ready to pounce on it and constantly chasing after it. So you get this idea that doubt is this thing that looms over you constantly that you can't get rid of, and you have to be very careful not to let it in. So now it's your turn. You're going to use the same steps that I used to interpret figurative language in the poem. First, you're going to identify the type of figurative language used, and you're going to say what is being compared or being described. Then you're going to interpret the meaning of the poem. For your practice, let's look at this last line, and bows but to courage and patience and skill. So looking at this line, what type of figurative language is being used, and what does the author mean here? Take a second, pause the video, and follow the same steps, and we'll go over it to see if you're on the right track. All right, let's check your answers. Your first step was to identify the figurative language used. The author says, and bows but to courage and patience and skill. So what's happening in this line is that doubt is bowing to courage, patience, and skill. So doubt, courage, patience, and skill are all given human characteristics, and we know that is personification. So if doubt can only bow to courage, patience, and skill, what does that mean? You should have said something along the lines of the fact that doubt is powerful, right? We talked earlier in the poem about all the things or all the ways doubt can be harmful. Doubt is powerful, but you can overcome it if you have courage, patience, and the skill to accomplish that goal. So again, let's look at this line one more time and ask ourselves, what picture is created through the use of these words? What emotions do you feel? And how does Edgar Albert Guest feel about this idea of doubt? You should have pictured almost someone bowing or being defeated by something else. Doubt can be defeated by courage, patience, and skill. So now I want you to try this with a text of your own. While you're reading, find one or two pieces of figurative language. Identify the type of figurative language. Is it a simile, a metaphor, an idiom, personification? explain what is being compared or described, then see if you can interpret the meaning using the same steps that we used in this lesson today. Let's review what we did. We discussed the importance of descriptive language in a text. We reviewed the different types of figurative language. We identified some of those pieces of figurative language in the poem Can't. We interpreted the meaning. And then we analyzed how Albert Edgar Guest used figurative language to help us understand these two things about doubt. It can be powerful, but courage, patience, and the ability to accomplish a goal are more powerful than doubt. Hopefully after this lesson, you're a little bit more comfortable with identifying the different pieces of figurative language in a text and interpreting their meaning. Thank you so much for learning with me today. I can't wait to see you back here for our next lesson.